Good evening, and good evening. I am so excited to share this evening with you. So, I know a lot of people are tuning in, and I don't know if you were already expecting for me to be tearful. Trust me, we will get there. And if you do not know who I am, and this is your first time tuning in, I am your host, Rah Kalon, and this is Energy in Motion. And thank you for joining me. I can tell you that you are in for a special treat tonight. I have some of my favorite people here with me, and we're going to talk about a subject that is near but not so dear to all of our hearts, yet I think all of us are familiar. All of us can relate. We're going to talk about grief. And if any of y'all are 90s babies or 80s babies and you know who used to say good grief, we're going to do Charlie Brown justice. We're going to talk about some good grief tonight, okay? And yes, it does exist. Good grief does exist. So I want to start us off with a quote or two before I introduce my amazing guests. The first quote goes like this: "Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All of that unspent love gathers in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. We talk about them, not because we're stuck or we haven't moved on, but we talk about them because we are theirs, and they are ours, and no passage of time can change that. So I want to talk to you about the people that are where I put the love that I have built up. And I want to talk to you about the people that belong to the wonderful woman that we're going to be elaborating about this evening. Let me introduce you to my beautiful family. Let me start with my wonderful big brother, Judah Hoggabook. Say hello to the people, Judah.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, doesn't he have we got that voice. We got that voice. Hold on. Let me introduce you to my daddy, though. Daddy, hit him one time. Good morning. Oh.
Yep, we're going to have fun tonight.
We're going to have a good time. Yes, if you thought that Good Grief was going to be just a sad episode, I'm sorry, but that's going to disappoint you because we're here to celebrate. So I want to kind of start us off with this opportunity to remember what the purpose of the show is all about. This is a place to talk about the science, the purpose, the vision, the experiences that we pack into this box of feelings that we carry around with us all day, every day, and that people belittle so often, that people don't give the credit or the attention to. And so all these things pile up on us, burden us down. This is where I want you to come on a bi-weekly basis to sit down and unpack it. You are safe here. You are welcome. You are wanted, okay? So, father and brother of mine, can y'all help me define, because I don't want to hear from a dictionary, I don't want to hear from Webster. Can you define grief for me? Let's work on it together.
I truly love how you explained the desire to love but be kind of caught and stuck. That blows my mind in and of itself. My definition of grief is dealing with a process of lack, and in understanding that lack, having to figure out, what am I going to do with these emotions? Mm-hmm. Usually dealing with a sense of grief has an emotional roller coaster that comes along with it. And then having to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do to unpack this that I'm dealing with?
Yeah.
And so it's a process of unpacking
yeah.
this sudden traumatic experience that I'm dealing with right now.
I like that. It's definitely about unpacking, because I think a lot of people forget that they even have the option of unpacking. I think they feel like it's almost disrespectful to take the burden off. They need to keep the burden because it's what makes them feel close to the person they lost.
Exactly.
How about you, Daddy? What do you think?
I would look at grief as being something similar to, what we define the past as being. You're going through these different rooms in your mind, and you're trying to find something that's no longer there. And it's an opportunity, if we take it that way, to be able to find more than what we had before.
Okay, more than what we had before. And I love that you choose that wording, because I think grief you automatically put with loss. Mm-hmm. And so you don't even think about there being an opportunity for more or to expand, because you feel lesser. You feel like something's been taken away. So I like the contradiction to what we usually think about. So, Daddy, I am so honored, one, that we are able to talk about this now together, just because I know the ache. We know the ache. And I want you to kind of tell everybody, how did you come to know Rhonda Batten, since she didn't start off as Rhonda Hoggabook? How did you come to know Rhonda Batten, and who was she as this wonderful woman?
Well, I think it's neat that we're given the opportunity today to look at this wonderful, wonderful woman. I wish you knew her. I wish each one of you out there had the opportunity to meet her. You've got loved ones that I would love to have known, and if the opportunity ever arises for you and I to sit down and you tell me about them, I sure would love that. But let me give you a little snapshot of Rhonda Batten, Rhonda K. Batten, as she was earlier known, before she became a Hoggaboot. I met, well, that's not accurate. I actually saw Rhonda for the first time in the fall of 1976. It was in a financial aid line at the University of Georgia, and I looked across the way. She was about 3 or 4 lines down from me, and she had the biggest thing I remember about it is she had on this green and beige toboggan, and she had on this big, beautiful smile. She probably couldn't have, if she didn't wear anything else. I remember that about her. And that was the first time I saw her. Didn't see her again until February 23rd of 1977.
There you go.
And so that was the day I actually got to speak with her. And the way that happened was I was a pre-law major, had studies to do, and the way I usually studied was I'd study in my dorm. This particular night, I decided to take a bus over to the main library on campus, and I mean, when I did that, I took the bus over. I got off the bus, go into the main library. Normally, I study on the first floor.
Obviously, the first.
For some reason, I decided to go up on the 4th floor. Got off on the 4th floor, walked around the elevator shaft, and came up on the tables that were there, and passed several tables, got to this one table. There was someone with their head down on the table, and as I approached, she lifted her head up, and I saw that smile, I mean, that beaming smile, and I walked on by giving her my best, who are you smiling at, look. and so I walk on around, and you know how you want to feel like you're at the right spot for you to study. And so sure enough, I walked on around and ended up right back at that table, and kind of apologetically asked if it was all right for me to sit here, and she said sure. And so I sit down and I pull out my books and to prepare to study, and before I could get into what I was about to do, she started asking me questions. She had a survey for a class she was taking, and she wanted to get my views on it. And she completed her survey, she packed up her books, and she left. And I sat there at the table and thought about...
Like a dummy.
Yeah. Thought about what had just occurred, and then realized, I mean, after looking at my books, I didn't have anything to study. I packed my books back up and got on the bus and, went back to the dorms. And that was my first meeting of Rhonda. Sure enough, a few weeks later, I ended up seeing her coming down a hill on a bike, and I'm driving up the hill, and I waved her down, and for the next 36 years, we never were apart from each other, and there are other standout incidents in that. You're looking at a woman who is totally and truly committed to God, and that was what I saw. That was what I saw in the smile. That was what I saw in the various opportunities we had to get together. She invited me to these in-home fellowships that she was a part of, and from that I started learning things about God that I never knew before. And that was an amazing experience in and of itself. She also informed me of something. We were at a movie, and I'm sitting there watching this movie, and she reaches over and holds my hand, and it was real sweet. She holds my hand, and then she looks over and she says, "Tommy Hagebuck, I'm gonna marry you." And I kind of ease my hand out and put it back in my lap where it belongs, where my hand belongs. But she was right. I mean, she hit it on the head. That was not my game plan at that time. I mean, my intent was to get my law degree, build a house, and put me a wife in it. I mean, and she just kind of screwed all that up. But I'm glad she did.
Yeah.
So you see someone that was not only God-fearing, but I mean, was courageous and bold and fearless in so many ways. And these are characteristics that, I mean, she carried on for years and years and made her so very attractive to me. I mean,
of course.
Okay. And then let's skip ahead a little bit. We got married in 1978 in the fall, and then 8 years to the day that I met her, this young man came into being on February 23rd, 1985, 8 years to the day.
What a coincidence.
If you believe in those. And then 14 years to the day, this wonderful lady came into existence, Rah did, and if you know anything about, biblical numbers, 8 years is signifies new beginnings. 14 years, 7 is spiritual perfection. So it's double spiritual perfection was the time, for Rachel to come into existence. And all Rhonda ever really wanted was to be a mom. She really did. She wanted to teach, and she'd teach. Growing up as a child, she'd have the dolls out and instruct them, and they were never obedient, so she knew she had to have her own children.
Oh, yes. So she could get them right.
So she could get it right. And in the process of doing that, she also knew she wanted to homeschool them. She wanted to have them by natural childbirth. So in 85, when Judah was born, it was at a midwife center, and it was our first child. He had some complications, so we had to rush him to the hospital, and as a result of that, it was a couple of days before she really got to hold her baby like she wanted to, but she had him like she wanted to. She didn't want to have him in a hospital. With Rachel, it was a totally different matter in that she was had in the upstairs area of our home that we had then in Cedar Hill. No complications whatsoever. She came out. Rah came out, and we cut the umbilical cord and placed her on her mom's chest. And I called Judah in so that he could see his new baby sister, and he comes in and he looks over at her and then walks out and goes back to watch Carmen.
Every time you tell the story, you get so excited at his lack of interest.
Yeah.
Luckily,
it's like,
luckily he has an interest in me. The story gets better. It wasn't all just, I did become more interesting. You're tuning in, you know that.
Really. Oh yes, she became much more interesting as time went on. But all of that's just to give you a little small snapshot of who this wonderful woman is, why we cry so many tears even to this day for not being able to have her physical presence here. She's with us. She never leaves us. But we miss that physical presence quite often. And so let me move on to what happened. One of the things that Rhonda and I love to do, and we're able to do a lot more of it after the kids were out of the house and we were empty nesters there, we love to dance. And so from 2009 on, we started taking these East Coast and West Coast swing dance classes and practicing our little swing dance. We converted a room The kids couldn't come back because we converted their rooms, one in particular bedroom, into a dance studio.
It was my bedroom.
Yeah.
It
was.
It was my bedroom. But I liked all the mirrors.
Unimportant part of the story we don't even need to discuss. Okay, but we had the mirrors in there, and we put in hardwood floors and all of that, just so that we could, practice our dancing. And the sweetness of that was that it was something that she was mine again.
Yeah.
She had been mama for so long, and she was mine again, and we could learn and grow. And one of the beautiful things about dancing is you get to showcase your partner. At least the male gets to showcase his partner and give her the opportunity to shine in every respect. And I always loved that. And with the dancing, so much learning went on in that process. Part of one of the things that we would do while we were dancing would be to make sure that I would blindfold her so that she had to focus on the instructions I was giving her non-verbally. The hand motions and things that
Y'all were just kinky.
So, with the blindfold on, I would constantly tell her, "I got you, and that in that alone there was instruction, because she was raised. By the time Rhonda was 14 years old, both her parents had passed away, and so that feeling of abandonment, that feeling that death could claim your loved ones at any point in time, was always something that she had to bear and she lived with. And at that point, you would think, we're probably in our over 30 years of marriage, you would think she'd know I had her, but doing it and saying it during the dance communicated it in a way I think, we never really had talked about or had it communicated before. And so there was a lot, that was involved in our dancing together. Tremendous joy, tremendous,
sweetness.
Sweetness. That's the best. On Saturday mornings we'd dance, and then it would be our time for other horizontal dancing going on.
Yeah, it was.
But it
was
always
coming home from college.
It would always
they were very happy.
Be a nice lead in to other things. Well, that leads me to the week of February 10th. It was the week heading into the Valentine's Day season for 2014. And in the process of doing that, your mom decided that she wanted to have us dance every night, before we went to bed. So she had this playlist that she put together. I still have it. I still use it, to this day. She had this playlist, and she would play a song. She started on that Monday night, February 10th, and we danced. And then at the end of the dance, I would dip her, and we'd kiss, and that happened each night of that week, all the way up to Friday, which was the 14th. And she prepared this special little dinner there at the house, and we did our dance. And then February 15th, things culminated, I guess, with a concert that we went to, the Frankie Beverly concert, and the last dance she and I ever had was at that concert, and the song was "We Are One," and it's still a favorite of mine to this day. And so that's February 15th. 16th was that Sunday. The 17th was that Monday, and I woke up hearing her in the kitchen. And I came out and I sat down, and she came over and she sat in this recliner, and she was telling me her head had been aching, and she was feeling a little nauseous. And I thought, like what you're thinking right now, that maybe something's going on here. But you have to understand, this is a woman for 30 some years I mean, she never went to a hospital. She had never gone to a hospital. I mean, in all of that time. I mean, she'd do doctor visits, checkups and things of that sort, but never spent a night in a hospital. Yeah. From that, I asked her if she wanted to, run to the doctor, because I'm wondering.
What time of morning was this, Daddy?
This was like 6 something, close to 7 in the morning. And she said no, she just needed to get some rest. And I mean, she's the type of woman who would make her own vegetable soup from scratch because she wanted to know the nutrients and things of that sort that were going into her body. I mean, so she was very conscious of health things. I'm the one that would eat the chili cheese dogs.
Yeah.
I mean,
throw it all in
for breakfast,
whatever it is.
I mean, so we put her in bed. I put her in bed, and she, goes off to sleep. And I called to let her job know that she wouldn't be in that day, and so from time to time I'd open the door to see if she was fine, and I could hear her snoring, and so later on that day I went in and I laid down beside her, and she's turned facing me. I can see her now, and pervert that I am, I'm staring at my wife asleep, snoring beside me, and thinking just how beautiful she is, and how thankful and how blessed I am, and that was not the first time that I ever thought that or watched her sleep and thought that, but that was the case that day, and I went off to sleep. And a while later I woke up and everything appeared to be fine, but there was an uneasiness about me, and the reason for it was I looked over at her and she was in the same spot she was in when I went off to sleep. And
she moved when she slept.
Yeah, and I thought that was strange, and so I got up and I shook her a little bit to try to wake her up because she hadn't had anything to eat, and so I was gonna bring her something to eat, and she wouldn't wake up, and still snoring, but she wouldn't wake up. And so the feeling that came over me was like someone had just picked me up. There was this cliff out here, and I didn't know the cliff was even coming. And they just picked me up and threw me off the cliff. And I'm trying to understand what's going on, but I know there are things I need to do here. And so I ended up calling 911, and then I called Judah. And you met me at the hospital?
Yeah, I didn't get there till like later on that evening.
Okay, and see, so the paramedics show up and they're trying to revive her and they can't revive her, and then it's they finally take her out, and they're working on her out in the bus, and I'm standing there in my driveway, and all I can think is, God is life. I couldn't come up with great, wonderful Bible verses or any other. All I could grab hold to was God is life, because I am falling. This is not an experience that I ever saw coming. Or fathom that could. Happen. People are going to die, but it just wasn't something I could even picture in my wildest dreams. But they took her over, and they got her at the hospital, and these guys, Judah and Rah, were there, and so the doctors come back with the prognosis, and they basically say there was nothing that they could do. That she had an aneurysm, and as a result of the aneurysm, there wasn't anything else. And y'all wrap me up. I am going to close this off in a little bit, but she'd had so there's fluid in her brain, and in their
too much pressure.
Yeah, in their experience, there was nothing to be done about it. And I'll tell you what I remember about that whole occasion,
and then I'll tell you what I remember.
Okay. What I remember is these two, my son and daughter, standing there, I remember me feeling like some crumpled figure. The only times my knees have ever buckled under me from pressure in a situation. The one and only other time was when Rhonda came to me and told me that she was pregnant with Judah. She just found out she'd gone to this center and she just found out, and she came out and told me she was pregnant, and it happened then. And then it happened while I'm standing there, and these people are telling me that there was nothing that they could do for my wife. And I remember the strength that my children were showing. I had no strength. I had nothing. I mean, I'm falling. I'm falling. I'm off this cliff. I'm not on the cliff anymore. I'm over the cliff. I am falling. There's nothing to grab hold to. No understanding of what's going on here. But I see tremendous strength. I see everything that she had put into them being shown. I see strength of character. I see heart. I see courage. I mean, in the worst of situations. And had it not been in this particular situation, it would have been something I could have stood there with such pride. I mean, watching, but they needed to be what they were for me at that time, and they were, and I'll always be so thankful for them because of that. But a nurse ends up pulling us aside, and it's almost like she didn't want the other folks there to hear that she was giving us some hope. Mm-hmm. And she told us that there was a doctor at the Methodist Hospital near downtown Dallas that might be able to do some surgery that could drain some of the fluid, from Rhonda's head. And to be truthful, I was hesitant at first about it because the idea of them drilling into my baby's head, the idea of them
changing her
in
any way, touching her in any way,
just did not appeal to me. But we talked, and as a result of us talking, we realized the best thing to do is to do everything we possibly could, to get her right. And
do you remember how that nurse had on black scrubs and none of the other nurses had on that color scrub? And she popped into the room, and she was standing in the room while we were just standing around Mom, and she was like leaning against the door frame, and and it was almost as if she wasn't supposed, like she was at the wrong hospital. She was just there, and she was just like, at Methodist, I hear that they can do da-da-da-da, just riddles it off, just real easy, right? Yeah. And I think one of us asked, would it help? Is it worth it? And all she said was, I'd do it if it were my mom, and she walked off. That was it. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like when we talked to the other doctors about it, that they didn't know why we would know about Methodist or who would have told us that. So her pulling us to the side, she just popped into the room and just said that and never saw that woman again. We didn't go back to that hospital, but she just seemed to so conveniently pop up at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's what you're thinking right now. That's what we believe it was too. So we have her care flighted over to Methodist, and sure enough, the doctor was available. That wasn't a guarantee, but he was available. That was a Monday night. Sometime in the middle of the night, they performed the surgery. They put in the drainage tubes, and everything went well with the surgery, to the point where during the day on Tuesday, she started showing some motion.
Oh, she woke up.
Was it Tuesday?
It
was woke up the next day.
No, she woke up the next day. Okay. Like, we were too hype.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Yeah, goosebumps.
So all of a sudden there was this limb that came out of nowhere as I'm falling, and we could at least grab the limb and hold on for dear life. And it was it was just so, God is life. I think
It
that was the
felt
first, yeah.
It
yeah.
felt like this horrible thing had happened that should have never had no business. That doesn't happen to us.
No.
Not to this small group.
Yeah.
It happens to the, as terrible as it feels, to other family members. It happens to other friends. It happens to other people's parents. It doesn't happen to us. But it was happening to us.
Yeah.
And then when it started to turn, it was like, well, that's right. That's about right. That's how this is supposed to go.
Yeah.
You better wake her up. She better wake up. And it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
calm down. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah. And so she's there for, I mean, a few weeks, couple of weeks. 2 weeks. And during the process of her healing and of course they performed the test, and there have been some memory loss, and there'd be times when she and I would talk, and I'd tell her, you got to make sure you do your absolute best here, because we want to get you home. We want to, I mean, give them no reason to keep you here any longer. And between that and her trying to grab my butt and
She didn't forget that.
No, she didn't forget. She didn't forget her family. She didn't forget her kids. I mean, yeah. But like I said, it was a healing process, that was to go on. A couple of things that I remember about that time. The only time that I ever left, the kids were there, and so she always had, I mean, someone around her. But this was a particular night. In the middle of the night, there were at least 4 nurses around her, 2 on either side, and they were working up with her. They were doing whatever they needed to do with her. And she, with this big smile, is telling them how important it is to find someone that loves you, that intensely loves you, that passionately loves you, because you deserve it. And the nurses they've all stopped what they're doing, and it wasn't just, I mean, perfunctory listening to her. They wanted to hear what she was saying. It's like she knew what was in their hearts, what they personally needed to have told to each one of them individually, and she was telling it to them, and they just stood there and listened. And it was such a sweet time. It was such a wonderful to have that, I mean, opportunity to witness that was just such a big blessing to me. And then the other event that I thought was outstanding, and I'm wrapping it up with this, when she was in there for the 2 weeks, like Rod said, and when it was time for her to be discharged and go to a rehab. I mean, she had to do some recovery. I mean, she'd been in bed for this long period of time. So she was to do some recovery at a rehab, center. And so she's get on the gurney, and they're about to take her. They're taking her out of her room to transport her to the rehab center. She's going down the hall, and all the staff and all the nurses come out into the hall, and they're applauding her, and they're cheering her. And I found out later that they'd never done that before. That they'd never had an occasion to do that with the patient. I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know if it's been done since. But that's the kind of impact this wonderful woman has.
Yes.
I mean, and Rachel, Rah, take it away.
Oh, Daddy, I'm Rachel for this episode.
Okay.
I'm Rachel.
Okay.
Rhonda named me Rachel. I'm Rachel. So while she was in the hospital, she talked a lot about what she experienced when she was unconscious. And me and my mom had a very open hippie relationship. She could talk to me about whatever law of attraction stuff. And when she first started talking about it, I was like, I don't know what you're saying, hippie things. But the more she talked, the more I listened, and the more I felt it, and the more I understood. So when she came out, she was so excited. Joyous woman, always was, but you would think after you wake up from an aneurysm that you'd be a little groggy. But she wanted to know where her grandchildren were, and she wanted to know how they were doing, and she wanted to know how my dog Vicky was, and she kept saying, oh, Vicky's downstairs in the car? Vicky's in the car? Well, just sneak me downstairs so that I could go see Vicky. And you don't got to sneak me back upstairs. You could just sneak me in the car and we could go home. And I was like, yes, Mama, I understand, but we got to keep you here till you feel better. We got to keep you here. But every time she asked, it just felt like the right thing to be like, you know what, we can sneak you, we could get you out of here in some capacity. So she woke up one morning and she specifically told me about a dream that she had. She was talking about, she called it a dream, but she called the whole time that she was unconscious kind of a dream. But she said that it was dark there, she couldn't see anything, but she could feel, and she could see through feeling. And so it was warm and it was safe, and that she just saw butterflies. So many butterflies, different colors, different shapes, different types of butterflies. And she was thinking about how when I was little, we would go outside to the garden and we would catch butterflies. And she was asking, do I remember that? I was like, absolutely, I remember that. And then soon after, the nurse came in, or not even the nurse, the doctor that comes in just to check the memory loss. And she's like, okay, Ms. Hockabook, we're going to go through this again. What's your husband's name? Tommy Hockabook. What's your son's name? Judah Hockabook. And then they started asking, well, what's your dad's name? And, John Miles. Okay, what's your mom's name? Rachel Hockabook. And she was like, and she asked me, she's like, isn't your name Rachel? She's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, my name's Rachel. She's like, who's your mom? And she's like, this is my mom. And she looked at me and she smiled. She was like, because she takes care of me like she's my mama. And she's like, I know this is my child. I know this is my daughter. At this point, she was pretty tired of these tests because she was like, I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know, and this isn't helping. And she wanted to get back to talking about her experience. And so she talked to me a lot about death in those 2 weeks that she was at this particular hospital, and how life and death, these are specific quotes from her, life and death are just a dance. You're just switching partners. That there was nothing to be afraid of, and that it wasn't this big bad boogeyman, that it wasn't scary, and that she said things like she had died in this particular hospital a couple of times, and she said this isn't the first time me and her have been next to each other. In most of these lifetimes we find each other. And I know there were some nurses who probably heard a lot of these conversations and were skeptical, right? They're like, these are the ramblings of a woman who's had a stroke. These are the ramblings of, but I knew she wasn't wrong about any of it, because everything she said resonated. Everything she said felt right. And so she told me about the times that we were here and I was actually her mother. And she told me about the times that we were here and we were just friends. And she told me about the times that I died first and how it took her years to get over it. And how there were times that she died first. She was always proud of how I took it. And I just couldn't imagine. I was like, I can't imagine all these lifetimes, and yet I knew them. I felt them and I knew them because I knew she'd always been my friend. And that was such a weird thing growing up, that she was such a good friend. She was a great mom, but she was a good friend. And she raised me like we were friends. And a lot of parents would be like, don't do that. You can't raise your kids like that. But when you got a kid like me, you can. And she knew she could. And so I knew it didn't always have to be this mother-daughter dynamic. She didn't have to be authoritarian over me or authoritative. She could be diplomatic. She could be open. She could be vulnerable. And so hearing that we were friends at one point, I was like, yeah. Hearing I was her mom, yeah, absolutely. And so she ends up going through this time in the hospital, and she is getting better. But she's still very convinced that she's not going to survive. It's almost like she's decided. It's almost like she saw what was over there and was like, I like that better. And these things that you were worrying about, these concerns, these worldly issues you have, don't really want to deal with them anymore. And at first I would have thought, I think, that's selfish. Why would you leave us here like that? But I think what she saw also included the fact that we would be better than okay. And I think it's that type of insight that she could relay to me that could help carry me through the rest of what happened. So she goes to the rehabilitation center that I picked out. I was asked to go and look for a place to bring her, and I went to many different ones in Arlington, many different ones, and I picked the rehabilitation center off Cooper in Arlington. And it seemed like a great place. It was a hospital and a rehabilitation center. I thought, ooh, that's perfect, because if anything should happen, they're a hospital also. So she gets to the rehabilitation center. Me and Dad meet her over there, and she is having trouble breathing. And I remember when we go into her room, one, she's having to share a room. I'm already irate. She does not share a room. That woman, no. So she already is sharing a room that's closed through with a curtain. And she's so sweet. We go in and she has her pink pajamas on and these yellow socks on. And her memory loss gave her these very childlike, almost just sweetness, because she was already sweet. But she just got sweeter with the fact that she couldn't remember all the dumb shit that had happened in life. She was light. She was free. And so she came, we walk into the room, and she's wheezing, but she's so happy to see us that she sticks this little hand out. She's like, hi. And it's like, hi. It's like picking up a kid from daycare, like, hi. And so we spend the rest of the evening surrounding her and talking to her, and the breathing keeps getting worse. And what they're supposed to do when they transport a patient from the hospital to a rehab is to send this packet of the medications they've been having and what they've been giving them. And that apparently did not happen. And every time I would go back to the nursing station and ask, do I need to drive to Dallas? Do I need to go and get it? They would assure me sometimes it just takes them a second to fax it, just give them some time. We'd hate for you to waste your gas and go over, because by the time you get there, it'll end up here. No need for you to do that. I should have did that. Actually, no, I shouldn't have done that, but they shouldn't have told me that, and I shouldn't have listened. So 3 hours go by, and by the end of those 3 hours, her breathing is to the point where every once in a while, specifically when Dad leaves the room, she'll look at me and be like, I can't breathe. And I'll be like, if you can tell me you can't breathe, you can breathe. Don't tell me that, just keep breathing. Don't tell me those things, just keep breathing. She's like, okay. And so while she's having trouble breathing, throughout these 3 hours, it stops being a conversation with her, and it turns into her repeatedly, compulsively saying thank you. She will not stop saying thank you. We're feeding her grapes. She's overheating. It's almost like when you leave a cell phone out in the sun. She's turning red. She's hot because she's hyperventilating. But all of this is thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're like, please stop talking. Just breathe. Please stop talking. Thank you, thank you. I got to say thank you. I have to say thank you. If I don't say anything else, I have to say thank you. She just keeps saying that over and over. And so there are nurses or RNs looking at her, saying, we don't have the packet yet. We can't give her a breathing treatment because we don't know what they gave her before, so we don't want to do anything that would hurt her. And it's like, well, this is hurting her. So I take her to the restroom, and then I bring her back to the bed, and Dad is entirely too frustrated, too overwhelmed with the situation of nothing being done, so he goes out into the hallway. And she looks at me, and she's struggling to breathe, but she looks at me, and she looks at me in my eyes. She's like, Sadie, I can't breathe. And I said, Mama, but I understand that it's hard. And she's like, I can't breathe, okay? And I say, okay. She says, okay? I said, okay. I said, okay. And she said it one more time, like, And I said, okay. And she was no longer her. At that point, she was a body. She was a body doing what bodies do when it's time for the energy that takes them up to be dispersed. And that's what it felt like. It felt like right after those okays, I didn't know why I was in the room anymore. All of a sudden, all these nurses, all these doctors rush in, asking, pushing, telling us to move, get out of the way. Like for the past 3 hours, we hadn't been begging, pleading for them to say or do anything. And so me and my father in the hallway, while these people are trying to bring her back, and annoyingly are successful, but they just resuscitate the body. They don't bring her back. And so I get my father together, and literally it's right across the street from medical center, the actual hospital. And I drive him over. I don't even know how I got him in the car. I don't even know how we got across the street. And my brother, he gets there, and they take us to what feels like the basement of the hospital. Yeah. It doesn't even feel like a hospital room. And they have her in there on this gurney, flat. Her eyes are open, and she's just looking. And she's not looking at anything, because it's not her. It's the body. The eyes are open, and they're just looking.
It looked like an autopsy room.
It looked like an autopsy room. She looked dead already, honestly. And we're standing around, and we're holding her hand, and Dad's talking to her, and we're saying all these things, but I'm not saying anything to her, because that's not my mama. Like that is a body. That is not my mama. And so the rest of that day, they proceed to do different tests and scans, and to get to the heart of it, they determined that she's brain damaged, brain dead, lost too much oxygen, there was too much time. There was too much time of her suffering, of her trying to breathe and no one helping, that there was nothing to get back. But we aren't a family that takes no for an answer well. We don't take that well at all. And so we proceeded to wait another week or two. And I'll be honest, I already knew she wasn't going to come back. I didn't want her to come back. I didn't feel safe for her here anymore. I didn't feel we could protect her here anymore. I didn't feel like the people who you would go to for situations like this were going to be of any use. It felt so intentional. People of color, it's not even a racism thing. The people of color, thank you, my love. People of color, just no one of all walks of life helping. And so that's what makes me feel like it wasn't no accident. So those 2 weeks that she's at the hospital, she does not wake up. Her body shakes and shivers because she's brain dead, and that's what the body does. It seizes a lot, and it seemed to be very sensitive to stimulation of any type, touch. Anytime we tried to touch her, she would shake. So you couldn't hug her or love on her, so it really didn't appeal to me to be there. So the night that she ended up in that hospital, when she was laying there in what looked like an autopsy room, I sat on my floor when I did get to my apartment, because I did go home because I didn't feel a need to be at the hospital. And I asked, Mama, what you doing? And all I heard in my head was, loving you, girl, loving you. And I say, are you there? Are you in there? And she's like, how am I in there if I'm in here? And I said, so what do we do? Like, do we pull the plug? Like, what do we do? She's like, in time, but give your father time. She says, he won't do well if we do this now. We need to give him every opportunity to feel like he did everything he could. Give him time. You'll know when, because he'll know when. Don't rush him. Be patient. Give him time. And it was hard, I'll be honest. I used to feel bad for saying it was hard, because I wanted it over. If she wasn't going to be in there as herself, I didn't want this reminder, this body laying there lying to me, faking it. But I'd go in and I'd watch Everybody Loves Raymond all day while Dad was at work. I had a job at the time that allowed me time off, and they didn't question me. They knew I wasn't gonna come, so they luckily allowed me to be gone, and they fortunately paid me while I was gone, so I could be there all day. And I would be there, and they'd come in and they'd suck the liquid out of her mouth, and they'd open her eyes, and she'd shake, and I'd look over, and she'd calm down. And every once in a while I'd check in my head. I'm like, you're sure you're not in there? She was like, I am more in you than I am in there. And I said, okay. And so after about a week or so, they tell Dad, like, nothing's helping. It's not going to shift. It's not going to change. And they start to walk him through plans of what can happen, what we can do. A couple of days later from that, they start talking about she's a donor. So what parts can they actually still donate, or can she still donate? All very surreal conversations. If any of you have ever been through this, when people start talking to you about your family's body parts, like they did such a good thing. They really want you to, you don't know what the fuck anybody, you don't know. But the whole time I'm getting angry, I can hear her in my head like, girl, I don't need that no more. I don't need that. Let somebody have it. Stop being petty. Stop being... And she's just annoying, or as annoying in my head as she is in real life. Because she's right. That's the thing. She's right. So we get to the point where they're going to we pick a Monday. We say if she doesn't wake up by Sunday, isn't that what we said? That Monday we would allow them to do it. And that was March 18th. But March 17th, so a month from when she went into the hospital, a very, very amazing thing happened. And I think I can only have my brother help me tell this as to what occurred, because with everything we had seen before, we would never have expected this.
So what was incredible was the decision that the three of us had made, because we took the time to step aside and talk about the options that were there to be able to make the decision. Do we want to keep her on life support, or do we want to remove the life support and not just put it in the hands of the father, but honestly just allow things to go along the way that they decided to. By that time, we'd been there for about 2 weeks, and we realized, okay, we came to the understanding that we were going to go ahead and remove the ventilation for the sake of her well-being is not going to be, if she was to wake up, her well-being at home wasn't going to be that, wasn't even going to be at 80%.
She wasn't going to be who she was. She wasn't going to, and she didn't want to be dependent on anybody. Like even when she was in the other hospital before everything else, she hated people wiping her butt, like, let me do stuff for myself. So this was how the rest of life was going to be. She would have whooped our ass if we had brought her back around for that.
And so because of that, I mean, we already knew is if she was in a state that she couldn't function and move, all she could do was look at us, she'd be horrible. And there would be nothing she could do but look at us and think, why am I in this condition?
Yeah, you know me better than that.
Yeah, so I live for life and life full. Don't put me in a position that I can't live for the fullness of who I've done, who I am for all these years. So that, for me, was a comfort of realizing us make the decision that we were going to do as far as pull the life support. So that's Monday evening around 5:30 or so. And the doctors give us the steps as to, okay, this is what we should expect the body to do as a result of turning all the machines off. And they gave us a time frame of within about 30 minutes or so, the body's just designed to just, without any oxygen going in, that it's going to pretty much go ahead and just pass away. That she would give a few kind of hiccups and then the body would just pretty much decease. So they went ahead and we knew what was going to happen. Her sister was there with us, and they went ahead and pulled all the plugs and everything. And what was amazing is during that time, her body was breathing. And we assumed that the breathing was taking place because of the ventilations. So they turned everything off, and lo and behold,
Pause. So I was hiding.
You sure were not. You were not there. I forgot about that.
And I have to add that I was hiding because I remember I came and I asked you for permission. Like, can I not be in there? I was like, I saw it the first time. I can't be in here the second time. I feel like a coward, but I can't be in here the second time because I heard what they said was going to happen. I was like, that's what happened before. I don't want that. And so I was hiding in the waiting room, guest room. And every once in a while, once they had pulled everything, Aunt Janice would come in and she'd love on me and check on me. And she would update me, even though I didn't want to be updated because I didn't want to know what was going on. And she would tell me, like, oh, she's turning blue, she's turning gray now, she's making this god-awful noise. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then finally she goes and she comes back and she calls for me. She's like, Ray, you gotta come on. I was like, and I hope I did not yell at her, but I like, you have to leave me and you have to leave me alone. I can't see that again. And she was like, you need to come see your mama. She's not dying, she's sleeping.
And that's exactly what she was doing. She breathed stronger without the ventilations than she did with them on. And it blew our minds completely because we had an intentions of the steps that we were about to see as a final goodbye. And lo and behold, the complete opposite took place. That we pulled all the switch, the doctors did their thing, and then lo and behold, she started breathing strong. And as the night progressed, she breathed stronger and stronger and stronger. And we're thinking, what in the world is going on?
We could not. You couldn't be more proud.
Yes.
Because you literally are like, doctors are coming in like, oh, she's still alive. Oh, damn. And they walk out and they're talking to us about hospice care. Like, we literally have nothing else to offer you here. These are some names of some local hospices. Like, we don't know what else. You could take her home tomorrow. They've already told us that.
And we started making arrangements to take her home. And that was the best night that I'd had in a long time. Just watching her breathe. She didn't totally
and we could
recover.
touch her.
Yeah.
We could kiss on her. She wasn't seizing. She wasn't shaking. We could love on her.
She said, if she's going to go out, she's going to go out on her own terms. And that's the kind of woman she is and always has been. And so we started making arrangements, for hospice at our house. I would see, and you guys are so wonderful. It's interesting to hear, from your point of view, how you were looking at it, that you didn't want her to continue to suffer and all the aftershocks is what I called them. And seizures that she was having, it got hard even for me. But my thing was I told her, she made a similar comment to me when she was in the first hospital that she asked me, she said, Tommy, am I going to die? I said, what are you saying that for? Why would you even think that? because my little pea brain wasn't going to even try to comprehend that idea. And my thing too was I'm going to take you home, and that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to happen was for me to get to take her home, and I'd been promising her that, and I didn't lie to her. So so now, even if it's meaning that she didn't revive, but she was breathing, she was going to be in my living room for the rest of our days, and right there, and I would have been just fine with that. Even though I know now that was not the best, it just wasn't, but I would have been fine with it that day. And for that time, and it was, a good night's. I didn't necessarily sleep, but I'm there the whole night, and every now and then I'd look over to be sure she was still breathing. And she was. And
sleeping so sweet. Just I could not stop beaming at her. Cause she looked better. She just looked beautiful. Her hair was down and it was around her. She had these beautiful golden locks, and she just looked comfortable. She didn't, and even when they came in and messed with her, she didn't look like sloppy. She looked like, okay, all right. And she went back she resituated, and I left, and I felt okay to leave, because it was like, because I feel like we won this thing. No matter what happens after this, I feel different about what this wasn't taken from me.
Yes.
This was a choice.
Yes.
This was something that was going to happen, and she allowed it to be something that was a launching pad for faith and for possibility and for expansion. So tell them about the next morning, dude. Dab in my face, fall apart quietly.
So all these miracles are taking place Monday evening. Tuesday, we made a decision with the hospice as to where it is we were going to, how we were going to care for her. We were going to care for her at home. And so Dad's at home, getting the house and everything positioned for us to be able to bring her in on a gurney, and however they were going to get that handled as far as transition. Now, all along, the night before, she was still in the ICU. And so, as most hospitals are, is the moment you're in a position that you don't need the ICU's care, you no longer stay in the ICU. So, when they realized that there's nothing else that the doctors or the nurses could do, they realized they needed to transport her to another level of the hospital. And pretty much is where patient care was going to be the place. And so I think we're on like the third floor in the ICU. I follow her in the elevator, and we transport, I guess, to like a fifth or sixth floor, and I'll let everybody know where we're located at. She's breathing along strong, steadily, with no problem from the transition from the ICU to the elevator, from the elevator upstairs to where we're supposed to be, and she's just fine in the room for the patient care. Now, what's very cute is the nurse that's there with me as we're transporting her along. Pretty much gave me the understanding, because it was just me and my mom that were there at the time, saying, well, there's no guarantees that how long she'll be breathing, saying that the body's function is to breathe for a period of time, and then once kind of like the brain understands that what's going on isn't being supported by anything, things will end. And I'm listening to her and thinking, but you don't see what I see right now.
You don't know who I know.
You don't know who it is in the spirit of the person who I'm with right now. And it's an incredible thing. So we get in the room, nice setup room and things like that.
It was a nice room.
And the intent for being here is only really until we get everything at the house ready to go for her, for whatever transport, to transport her from the hospital in Arlington to the house in Mansfield. She is in the room for probably about 6 or 7 minutes. And while she's in the room, I'm obviously there with her. All of a sudden, I can identify her breathing starts to shorten. And kind of like the same thing she did on a much lower scale when she was with you, her breathing slows down. And within about a minute and a half, you can tell the body's trying to catch its breath. And from then on, the body just kind of slowly deceases. And the process is very serene. It's very quiet. It's very still. The nurses, when this takes place, takes the time to leave and gives me that time. But the body pretty much did what the nurse in the elevator said is it kind of, I don't know if it was from the elevator experience or what, but the body pretty much said is I had enough. And it was very, very sweet. It was wonderful to get a chance to kiss my mom for the last time in the physical body. But to be able to have that time, just me and her, because what's very different was this traumatic experience that you had. Yeah, she was still asleep. And the experience that you had, but she was at peace. And so the experience I had wasn't the communication, but it was very, very, very right. It was right for her and for me. And I was appreciative and very honored to have that opportunity. And to be at a place of just, it's kind of like she raised me to be stable. And so at that time, it was a stable experience. This wasn't a fear of, no, you can't do this right now. We had all these plans and intentions of if you're going to do this at all, this is going to be months from now and you're going to be at home. It was, okay, this is supposed to take place here and now. And so I called Dad and said, because I know he's at the house getting everything ready together and knocking stuff out of the way to make sure there's room for her to get there. And I called him and said, come on back to the hospital. Don't worry about straightening up the house. And then we get off the phone. And I gave you a call, and
you had been texting me, and I was on my way, and I was in the drive-thru at McDonald's.
Yep, sure was.
Because I'm like,
my
mama sleeping. I'm about to go see her. It's gonna be all right. And you would text me twice, like, "Are you close?" And I was like, "Yeah, almost." And mine was going slow, and then finally you text back. You were like, "Because I asked you, did you want something?" I was like, "I'm fine. McDonald's on me." And you're like, no, I don't want anything. You might not want to get too much to eat. Mama just passed. And it's like, oh, fuck. Pull out of the drive-thru. And I sit there for a second and I'm like, all right. All right. There wasn't anger. There was awe.
Yeah.
There was amazement. There was honor. I was too hyped. I started clapping because that's what she teaches me to do when someone passes. You clap at funerals, you smile, you giggle, you whatever you need to celebrate. But Jesus.
And I love how the way the Father led the way things to go they did, because instead of her being home and we're hoping on hope that she will wake up, that even though we had intentions of her going home, that the Father knew the sacrifice we put in, not just those last 2 weeks, but the entire month. Yeah. That to be able to kind of end things there instead of having to transition and continue to sacrifice, and you wouldn't be working because you would be there beck and call for everything that was necessary, and then we would be there physically, and it would be a tremendous adjustment in all of our lives.
And we were all willing to do it.
And we would have did it without a question.
We were willing to do it, but I won't lie and say that I would have wanted to.
Yeah.
I wanted my mother, but who this person would have turned into, she would not have been who she was.
Who would have came home was not the person we would have known all along.
And she would have, not even the excuse of she would have been resentful, but she wouldn't have been happy. And that's who raised us, was a happy woman.
Yeah.
And I know she's happy now, and not a question like it would have been. Yeah.
But if any of you folks out there have had similar heartbreak, similar loss, similar situations in your life, don't think we've gotten this all together. We may come off in presentation right now that, we handled this, we're off that cliff, falling, and in some respects we're still, and I'd like to say that we're not telling you that grief has a time limit on it. No. We're not telling you that. We're not telling you how you should grieve. Nobody should tell you that. Ever. What you're going through, what you've experienced, it's such a personal thing. It really is. It's a personal, individual, but yet universal community affair that goes on when we grieve, when we have.
And you have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Like even when you're in community, which is what we're offering, you still have to go through it alone.
Yeah.
And you have to find sanctuary in that. You can't be resentful of that. That's who you need right now.
Yeah. But find your way, find your answers. I did a lot of yelling, a lot of cussing at God, a lot of, asking the questions why, and why questions leave you as a victim. They really do. They leave you in a place where you, many of them you're not going to get answers to right now anyway. Probably the biggest takeaway I've gotten from all of this is realizing that my perception, how I perceive things going on in my life, that's really what's important. If it hadn't been time, people will say time, heals all wounds. Bullshit. I'll put it this way. In my experience, it's bullshit. Mainly because if I allowed myself, I could be right back there. With nothing but a great desire to leave this earth, because who I considered was my life, was gone. So what was the point of me being around here? And I'm not going to get into it a whole lot. But
you understand though.
Yeah. 2 or 3 months, from the time when Rhonda passed, I ended up in the hospital myself. I was saving pain meds so that I could off myself. And it's wonderful to be able to say that aloud now, because that was my plan. That was my intent. And that was how hard. I don't want you to think, because we may seem together right now, that it was that way back then. This has been a process. It really has. And in that process, so many different things. Once again, for me, these two and the grandkids were a tremendous, factor in me wanting to even get better, and wanting to, and that's the other thing. What God did. I'm sitting watching television one day, 2015 or 16 or so, and something as clear as day, said, and I can make things better, and just the idea. See, I would have been satisfied to have my old life back. I would have been so happy just to have had my old life back. But he didn't say, I'll get you your old life back. That things could actually be better. And that was so unfathomable. It was just so beyond possibility. But yet and still, at least by that point, I was starting to believe that there was a God again, enough to the point where I realized he was omnipotent. And so if you're saying that you can do better, you can make this all better, then what you're, so I had to believe, because he's omnipotent, that he could do what he said he could do. Whether I could believe it or not was a whole nother matter, but that he could do what he said he could do. And so that's all I could hold on to for the longest. That promise. And if he gives you those kind of promises in life, he also makes provisions for those promises. He'll make sure that he provides that way. And he's been faithful to do that. He's shown his dependability through all of this. And he's
flexible in how he does it. Because
that's right.
I know that I needed to still be connected to her. And I am not superstitious. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in spiritual activity. And I do believe in love. And I believe love communicates. And I believe love can't be silenced. And I believe love, like life, is energy and it cannot be destroyed. It just moves. And so I was loved enough to be communicated with as to this is what's going on to this extent, as much as you need to know. And I got to feel her on a regular basis, see her in dreams, laugh and joke. And while some people would be like, well, that's just your brain trying to rationalize and process, so what if it was? it brought me joy at a time that it did not feel possible. And I immediately turned into Rhonda Hagebuck Jr. with the empowerment and the loving people and this is a beautiful thing. This is an amazing opportunity for us to expand and grow, because just like Judah said, we were built to be stable. We were groomed, not just by our mother, by our father as well. We were groomed to be sturdy for situations like this. And for it to get to a point where, even though I'm thankful and I'm communicating with her, I was still having panic attacks at night. There were moments that I would catch myself not breathing deep enough, and then I would hold my breath. And I honestly would psych myself out trying to revisit what I thought she might have felt when she was going through the suffocating. Like I would sit there and I would suffocate myself, genuinely. And then I'd gasp for breath and I'd sob and I'd go to sleep. And then 2 weeks later, another fit of it. And on a daily basis, still telling people, this is going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And I believed it. But my body was aching. The body aches. The body has a calendar. The body knows. It's been 5 years. This is the 5-year anniversary, March 18th of this year. And I was at work, and the week before the February 17th time, February 10th, just started sobbing for no reason. And it's not that I forgot what time it was, but my body told me before my conscience told me. And so this grief thing really has to be a process. It really is a journey, because there were moments 2 weeks after she passed that I was suspiciously elated because I was so close and connected to her. But now 5 years later, there are moments that I ache so deeply as if I had just lost her, because I feel the disconnect more, because I've learned how to navigate the world without being able to look to her. And so there's never going to be a finish to the grief. And that's not exactly what I'm looking for, what I want. I want to celebrate the love and not pay so much attention to the loss. I want to honor all of this love that I have. I want to find new places to put it. And this show is an example of a place to put it. When I started working for the nonprofit I work for, that was a place to put it. I needed to love. I needed to share. I needed to give, because there was so much given to me. And thank you, being thankful in the face of death, and being thankful in the face of true discomfort, being thankful in the face of you don't know what's coming next. Witnessing that, I will never be the same. Not because of trauma. There is trauma. But because I have been liberated to know the blood running through my veins says, when we get scared, we get more thankful. When we don't know, we know. When we don't know what's next, we trust. And as foolish as to some people that might sound, when you're falling, you want a limb or not? You want to, if it's an imaginary limb, but you can hold on to it, you still going to grab it, ain't you? Grab onto it then. And allow yourself that. If you need to talk to yourself, if you're talking out loud, don't let nobody make you feel no type of way about that. And yes, there are certain levels to that after a certain amount of time, but don't let nobody make you feel no type of way. If you know I'm grounded, I know what I'm doing, but I also know there's a connection, and I'm not going to ignore that, and I'm not going to be weirded out by it, because I know how much I was loved when I could see it, and I know how much I'm loved now because I can feel it. So I will go ahead and slowly wrap up this show. I want to do this take a beat moment that I always do, and I want to include my brother and my father in on this. So my mother, along with writing a book, you two hold up the book. So she wrote this beautiful book called More Than Mama Sees and Daddy Knows. And this is about her life through symbolic color. It's about her life and this opportunity for you to kind of get to know her through her experience, through her artwork. She not only painted that platter on the book, she took look at how professional that photo looked. She hung fabric in the garage at home and took that picture. I remember it was a hot ass day, and I was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm taking a picture from a book cover. And here's the book. So this book is something that if you have shared a story with me about grief that you are going through or that you did experience, I'll make sure that you get a copy of this. Thank you so much for sharing and for reaching out. But along with that, I want to share this beautiful, it's a storybook. It's a storybook that she wrote for us, and that she did this art piece for. Hold it up. This beautiful piece, which is in our home, and it's called Someone to Watch Over Me. And I just want to read the first, the thank you in the beginning. So this book is dedicated to my children, who are also my best friends, my Rachel and my Judah. You have taught me more about knowing and being loved by God than you will ever know. Thank you for the adventure of being your mom and all we have laughed and cried through together. Thank you for all the support and for believing in me as I have always believed in you. And lastly, to Tommy, my best friend for life. Thank you for all the many years you have allowed the Father to live through you and allowed you to be my true someone to watch over me. I love you. Signed, RB. And so this woman, wife, mother, teacher, artist, life coach, empowerment professional, like all of these things, we honor her. We honor the family along with us in Tennessee, in Texas, all over the states that are missing her with us. We honor your family that is out there. Those of you who are aching with us, we honor them. And we just want you to know that we thank you for tuning in. We hope that you can relate to something we've shared, because this is real life. And this conversation does not end, once again, just because the camera, clicks off. You can reach out anytime you would need to. And I just want to give my brother and my awesome father a huge thank you for coming and being so open to being vulnerable and sharing, because I know this was not easy, but it was necessary. Yes. And I'm proud of us. And I know she is too. I feel good about it. I feel real good. So if you want to continue the conversation, please reach out on Instagram. You can hit me up at 3EnergyNMotion. That's the number 3, the letter N, the word motion, 3EnergyNMotion. I want to make sure that you tune in tomorrow at 8 o'clock for 50 Shades with Jay. She is awesome. Make sure you get some relationship advice from her. And tune in July 4th. Yes, I mean it. July 4th. I'm doing this. Whether you watch it on the 4th or not, just know this episode is coming. This episode 7, it's going to be good to you. So thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for feeling with us. I am Rah Kalon, and please remember, you feel what you feel, and you still deserve to heal. Peace.